Imagine a city so powerful that it ruled nearly the entire known world. Its armies were unstoppable, its roads stretched across continents, and its emperors were treated like gods. For centuries, Rome stood as the ultimate superpower of the ancient world. But empires do not always collapse in flames. Sometimes they decay slowly, rotting from within before the final blow ever lands. This is the story of how the greatest empire of antiquity slowly unraveled, fractured, and ultimately fell. At its height, the Roman Empire controlled vast territories stretching from the cold lands of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, and from Spain across Europe to the Middle East. Nearly 60 million people lived under Roman rule. Trade flowed freely across well-engineered roads. Aqueducts carried fresh water into crowded cities. Massive arenas showcased spectacles of power and entertainment. Rome was not just a city, it was an idea, a symbol of order, dominance, and civilization. The Roman army was the backbone of this dominance. Highly disciplined legions marched in perfect formation, conquering lands and crushing rebellions with ruthless efficiency. Under the rule of emperors like Augustus, Rome entered a golden age known as the Pax Romana, nearly 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity. Stability allowed culture, engineering, and governance to flourish. From the outside, Rome looked invincible. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. As the empire expanded, it became increasingly difficult to manage. Power struggles grew more frequent. Emperors were no longer always wise leaders. Many seized power through violence. Assassinations became shockingly common. During the chaotic 3rd century, dozens of emperors rose and fell in rapid succession, many meeting brutal ends. Political instability became the norm rather than the exception. The army itself began to change. Soldiers who were once loyal to Rome increasingly became loyal to individual generals who promised higher pay or greater rewards. Ambitious military leaders realized they could use their legions to claim the throne. Civil wars erupted repeatedly, draining resources and weakening the empire from within. Instead of defending borders, Roman armies were fighting each other. At the same time, the economy began to strain under the weight of constant warfare and expansion. Heavy taxation burdened ordinary citizens. Inflation spiraled as emperors reduced the silver content in coins to fund military campaigns. The currency lost value, trade slowed, and economic confidence declined. Small farmers struggled, and many abandoned their lands. The gap between the wealthy elite and the struggling masses widened dramatically. In an attempt to restore order, Emperor Diocletian made a radical decision in 285 AD. He divided the empire into 2 administrative halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The idea was simple. A vast empire could be governed more effectively if shared between rulers. While this decision temporarily improved management, it also formalized a growing divide. The eastern half, centered around Constantinople, remained wealthier and more stable. The western half, with Rome at its heart, began to weaken more rapidly. Meanwhile, pressure was building along Rome's borders. For centuries, Rome had labeled neighboring tribes as barbarians, pushing them back and keeping them at bay. But these groups were not static. The Goths, Vandals, and other Germanic tribes were evolving, organizing, and growing stronger. The arrival of the Huns from Central Asia triggered massive migrations across Europe, forcing entire tribes to move toward Roman territory, seeking refuge and survival. Rome initially allowed some groups to settle within its borders, hoping to integrate them. But mistreatment, corruption, and broken promises led to rebellion. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths under the leadership of Alaric I. For 3 days, the once glorious capital was looted and humiliated. The psychological shock was enormous. Rome, the so-called eternal city, had not fallen to a foreign enemy in nearly 8 centuries. Though the empire survived this blow, it never fully recovered. The western provinces continued to weaken. The military increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries whose loyalty was uncertain. Internal corruption persisted. Leadership grew weaker and less effective. Plagues and possible climate fluctuations further reduced the population, shrinking the labor force and weakening agricultural production. Every problem amplified another, creating a cycle of decline. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was a shadow of its former self. Real power often rested not with the emperor, but with military strongmen behind the scenes. In 476 AD, a Germanic leader named Odoacer took a decisive step. He deposed the young emperor Romulus Augustulus and declared himself ruler of Italy. There was no grand final battle that marked the end. Instead, it was a quiet political shift, symbolic yet monumental. The Western Roman Empire had effectively ceased to exist. Yet the story does not end in simple destruction. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued for nearly 1,000 more years. Roman law, engineering, language, and governance deeply influenced the development of Europe and beyond. Modern legal systems, political structures, architecture, and even ideas about citizenship trace their roots back to Rome. Historians continue to debate why Rome truly fell. Some argue it was barbarian invasions. Others point to economic collapse, overexpansion, political corruption, military decay, or social inequality. The reality is more complex. Rome did not fall because of a single catastrophic event. It fell because multiple weaknesses compounded over time. It expanded beyond sustainable limits. It struggled to adapt to internal and external pressures. It lost the unity and discipline that once defined it. The fall of Rome remains one of history's greatest lessons. No empire, no matter how powerful, is immune to decline. Strength can breed complacency. Wealth can invite corruption. Division can undermine even the mightiest institutions. Rome's collapse reminds us that dominance is temporary, and that civilizations survive not only through power, but through resilience, adaptability, and unity. In the end, the empire died, but the legacy of Rome endured. Its influence shaped the world that followed. And perhaps the most haunting truth of all is this: the fall of Rome was not just a historical event. It was a warning written across centuries, reminding every great power that no throne stands forever.